Hello and welcome here to this video on Pluto, which completes the triumvirate that I've made. First is Uranus, the awakener, second, Neptune, the mystic, and third is Pluto, the transformer. Pluto is a transformer, and if you found this video, perhaps you're going through a Pluto transit in your life. There's a lot going on, or maybe you resonate because you have a strong natal Pluto. How does Pluto work, and why do some people not relate to Pluto at all, while other people find the movement and transits of Pluto profound? The reason is that Pluto operates under the radar. It's a deeply subconscious planet, and part of the riches and gifts of empowerment that it brings are excavating the subconscious to come into consciousness. In this way, Pluto works with the hidden realms, and for many of us who are drawn to themes like the occult, astrology, a spiritual search, the planet Pluto resonates with us because it is all about getting to the bottom of things and making the unknown known so that we can then step into our power and be able to move between the two worlds, the world of the light, which belongs to Persephone, and the world of Hades, which belongs to the realm of Pluto. So firstly, whenever we embark on a Pluto study, a Pluto video, a Pluto transit, we need to be in awe and respect of this planet. The three outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are gods, and they form a triangle of energies which are working on Earth in a very transpersonal or broad way. In other words, the energies of these three outer planets are affecting entire generations. They affect the entire Earth. They are not as concerned with the day-to-day events as planets such as Venus, Mars, Mercury, and so on. And this is why they are given the name transpersonal. With Pluto, respect is needed because even though it may appear to operate on a very hidden or under the radar way in the beginning, if it is not acknowledged and respected, these energies can eventually explode and become very, very potent forces which can wreak havoc or destruction if we are not careful how we bring them into our lives. Pluto was discovered at a relatively dark time in human history, the 1930s, when we were between two world wars, the rise of fascism had just begun, and the Great Depression was in its throes. In this way, Pluto alerts us to the fact that it has to do with wealth and power. And when we are looking at Pluto in a natal chart or by transit, it's often going to bring those two themes up to be explored and exposed. Why is Pluto a transformer? Because we need to go deeply down into the darkness and the depths of the underworld which is the realm of Hades, in order to bring up the light and the riches that are there. If we remain a victim or feel as if Pluto or life is doing things to us, taking things away, making us suffer financially or reputation-wise or career-wise or relationship-wise, we then will never emerge back into the light and claim our own power. So very, very important is that Pluto does not work well with the victim archetype. In order to move through a powerful Pluto or through a powerful transit, we need to leave that behind. We need to forgive, not perpetuate challenges that we may have had in the past, but move on and use the knowledge that we have gained in order to help others. And this is why Pluto is so often linked to healing, to science and scientists, to psychiatrists, therapists, psychologists, and to anyone who is trying to help another person or society from the jewels that they have gained through going deeply into something and coming out the other side stronger than before. In order to transform, we must let go. And what do we let go of? Of course, there are literal things that we may need to let go of during a Pluto transit. But on a deeper, more spiritual level, we are letting go of what the ego wants, because the subtext of Pluto is about control. So once we are forced to give up control and to let go of how things should be, this is when we can start to move through the real realms of Pluto. The shadow side of Pluto is linked to obsession, to even addiction at times. And this obsession with controlling someone or controlling something or controlling what we eat or how we relate to somebody, how we are in a power struggle with someone at work, that may be a sense of control that we feel we may need. What can happen during a Pluto transit is that we are forced to let something go. And if you have a strong Pluto natally, in other words, what is a strong Pluto? It could be that you have Pluto conjunct one of your angles, your ascendant or descendant, your midheaven or IC. Or you may have Pluto conjunct your chart ruler. And if you don't know your chart ruler, you could watch my 2 videos on the Ascendant archetype. It is the planet that rules your ascendant. Another signature of a strong Pluto is someone who has Pluto conjunct, square, or in opposition to their Sun, Moon, Venus, or Mercury. And of course, there are other signatures, and we don't want to get too technical here. But if Pluto is configured strongly in your natal chart, you may need to learn how to work with Pluto because at some point in your life you have felt disempowered. This may have been through a parental influence in the early home. The moon is often related to the mother, the sun often to the father. They may have been very dominating parents or very distant. Pluto is very, very distant from us astronomically, and this represents the distance that we sometimes feel between what is going on in our subconscious life and what is really playing out on the surface. And people with a deep Pluto signature may have a lot of subconscious information and stories from their early past, their early home life, that need to come up, need to be shared, need to rise to the surface, so that that disempowerment can turn into self-empowerment. What is important here is that Pluto is not something outside ourselves, although of course it literally is a huge, enormous asteroid type planet which is circling in the Kuiper belt, a cold, freezing place far away from Earth with our light. However, Pluto is living within us, and the story of Persephone and Hades is a story of our beautiful, innocent self, Persephone, being taken down into the underworld by Hades and having a kind of a spiritual awakening there, realizing perhaps that it was not such a bad thing to be separated from her mother Demeter, choosing perhaps to eat the pomegranate seeds in spite of what Homer says. This is also very, very interesting. Homer says that when Persephone tells her mother Demeter the story of her time in the underworld, she says that Hades compelled her to eat the seeds. And these seeds are very important because they are what keep her returning year after year to the underworld to be with her husband. But once we reframe the story and we look at it, we see that Persephone is telling her mother something different to what she is experiencing herself, because she is trying to separate and grow up, evolve and become an authentic woman. And the truth is that when she enters the underworld, she turns from a maiden into a queen, and she becomes this queen of the realm of Hades, and he is her king. So the myth is showing us that when we dig deeply into the subconscious and begin our own work, either on a therapeutic level or on a spiritual level, we start to connect with this side of ourself, which is Hades, which is Pluto. Because the myth is simply an illustration for different parts of us. When Demeter, the mother of Persephone, is in grief and mourning over the loss of her daughter, the earth becomes barren. And this is a symbolic way to understand how barren and empty our lives are when we are disconnected from our subconscious and from the very deep spiritual part within ourselves. Once the connection is made, Persephone marries Hades, she becomes queen, she eats the seeds, and after that she can return for part of the year to be with her mother Demeter, but then she will always return to the underworld. And this seems to represent an authentic person who has done work on themselves and can move between worlds, the world of reality and the world of illusion. And often people with strong Pluto signatures do go through challenging events early on in their life, or it may be one particularly challenging event that awakens them to this depth within themselves, and they end up eventually helping others or becoming healers in some kind of a way. In the natal chart, Pluto by house can show us where we attempt to impose our will onto others. Go to your charts and see where you have Pluto. It is an important house. The house that has Pluto is going to be emphasized, regardless of whether you have other planets there or not. If you have an angular Pluto in houses 1, 4, 7, or 10, it's going to be particularly prominent in those areas that the houses rule. If you need more information on the houses, I do have a video series on them, which I will post below. The important thing about Pluto in the natal chart is that we often project our Pluto onto others. So we need to not only look at the house that Pluto is in, but also at the house opposite Pluto. Evolutionary astrologers have something called the polarity point, which is the point exactly 180 degrees opposite Pluto. And this is considered a point towards which we are evolving, towards our evolution. So what this is saying to me is that the house that has Pluto in is often an area of life where we wish to control things, control others. And we need to move towards the house opposite, or we'll have lessons surrounding that which teaches us to relinquish control. For example, if you have Pluto in the first house, this is a signature for a strong personality. Very powerful person usually. And what that person may do is project their power onto the 7th house, onto the other, onto the long-term partner. So even though they may appear powerful in the world, they have a big personality, in the relationship they may be passive-aggressive, or they may diminish their own power. And what they are learning to do is to work towards learning how to be in an equally powerful relationship where not a single person holds the power. And it's very, very similar to someone who would have Pluto in the 7th house. They may give their power to their partner. They may have had experiences when very young of feeling disempowered, and part of their karmic lesson will be in learning how to balance that power and how to become self-empowered and stand up, project their own power, and so on. If it's a 2-8 dynamic, so in other words, if you have Pluto in houses 2 or 8, we're going to be dealing with resources. Pluto has the ability to really bring wealth. The word Pluto actually means wealth if you translate it. House 2 is my resources, my self-worth, my wealth. House 8 is my partners. So there will be lessons around issues of having, losing, wanting, controlling resources. And figure this out in your own chart or in the chart of your family members or people that you are in relationship with. How is this playing out? And how do we bring it to a conscious level? In other words, acknowledge it so that it no longer has a grip over us because it's operating in the dark. And this is the power of Pluto. Once we have awareness, everything changes. As with everything in astrology. That's why we study it. That's why we're interested in it, because it empowers us to really understand the archetypal energies which are playing out in our lives and how we can heal those stories. Houses 3 and 9 are going to be to do with education, with learning, with communication, with getting around, with perspective. What do you need to learn about the giving and receiving of knowledge? How do you communicate with others? Have you had an experience in your past where communication has made you feel disempowered? And are you now learning how to work with that and to come into your own strength? Houses 4 and 10 can be challenging. Often there's one of the parents are very, very dominating, or simply strong, just a strong personality. And you need to learn to work with that. If it's in the 4th, you may project it onto your work environment, the 10th house. The boss, my boss, you know how many times I hear my boss is dominating, they're trying to have power over me. How can you heal that? Because if you change jobs and get a new boss, they will most likely play out your Pluto story again. And remember, you have a choice. We are all like Persephone. We've eaten the seeds of the pomegranate, and we have this ability to move between the worlds, to come into consciousness, to wake up and see what's going on really in our lives. Otherwise, we are just being driven by forces that we don't understand. And there is no planet greater than Pluto which shows that unconscious drive that is living within us. House 10, the career, you may project onto someone in the home. Very, very important to recognize that. And many people will have to push deeply through their own fear in order to become empowered. And of course, Pluto is operating on so many different levels. It's very active in the charts of politicians because they are working with the areas of Pluto, power and wealth. And for us here, us mere mortals, we want to recognize that we are held in the grip of some of these powerful forces. And the secret here with Pluto is not to reject. For example, Pluto in the 2nd, maybe you reject wealth. Oh, I don't want to own anything because I'm on the spiritual path. So you project that wealth onto the 8th house, onto others. So other people must provide for you, right? Give you arms, give you home, whatever. What Pluto says is we need to recognize the story, the myth, and play it out. It's fine to have wealth. It's fine to have power if we are not attached to it and if we share it and use it to help others. And that's the key. What if you have Pluto in the 5th or the 11th house? There's going to be the dynamic going on between my own wishes, pleasures, children, love, needing to have essential or passionate life, and then this other people's needs, other people coming into our lives, friendships. Pluto in the 11th can often show someone that has very powerful friends. Do we project, if we have Pluto in the 11th, do we project that energy into the 5th? So we are the supplicant. If we have Pluto in the 5th, are we obsessed with controlling our children or our lovers or the creative energy in our life? How are we working with that flow? Many times Pluto is operating on a very, very subtle level because it's underground. But it's a case of the more we look, the more we see. And what about Pluto in the 6th or the 12th houses? House 6, there might be this need to control or an obsession about your daily routine, how things are. Possibly even in the service arena, how you do things and how you serve can become an obsession. The 12th, possibly a deep sense of not being understood or a profoundly spiritual life. Someone who may go off and isolate themselves for a while because they really need to process this Plutonic energy. Regardless, all these possibilities that I've mentioned are by no means inclusive. Sometimes Pluto is operating in an incredibly positive way in a chart. Usually when there is good Pluto karma in a family. And this is an interesting point, is that Pluto's signatures are usually astrologically genetic, in that if you have a strong Pluto, it is most likely you will be attracted to someone with a strong Pluto. Your children will have strong Pluto signatures, and your parents most likely have them too. So Pluto stories can be transformed, but they need a lot of work. And the work is bringing what is secret, what is taboo, what is not spoken about, what is hushed up into the light, into speaking about it, bringing it out. And in this way, we can transform that Pluto story and even transform the story of the family moving forward. The houses are far more important than the sign. The way astrologers use the sign of Pluto is for generational understanding. So, for example, we'll speak about the Pluto in Libra generation or the Pluto in Scorpio generation, Pluto in Sagittarius, and so on. Currently, babies are being born into the Pluto in Aquarius generation. And this is because Pluto moves very, very slowly through the signs. It has an irregular orbit, so a different number of years for each sign. But if you're interested in generational qualities of Pluto, feel free to look those up. They are interesting, and certainly each generation has an energetic signature. What about Pluto transits? They last any time from about 18 months, sometimes up to 3 years, but on average about 2 years. A Pluto transit is when Pluto that is currently in the sky is contacting your natal angles, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, or Mars. Also Jupiter, but a Pluto-Jupiter transit usually brings very positive energies for things to turn around, and many new opportunities can come into the picture. But with any Pluto transit, never underestimate it. Something that's been dormant a long time in your life, hidden feelings, hidden problems, hidden issues may suddenly come to the surface and force you to take a good hard look at it. A Pluto transit is happening because it is mirroring something within yourself. It's showing you whatever is going on in that particular area of your life. It's where you need to open up and let go. If you try to hold on to things during a Pluto transit, they will more than likely be completely taken away from you. The minute you let go energetically, everything falls into place. And you begin to see the riches of what is being offered to you. So, for example, if Pluto contacts your Ascendant, you might be going through an identity transformation. What do you need to give up in order to be reborn again? This is another crucial Pluto theme, death and rebirth. When Pluto contacts the 4th, is it about death? Is it about moving home, letting go, moving on? Is it about a parent? Endings and beginnings. The minute we let go and we realize it is the ego that is holding on with all its might to have an outcome that it wishes for, everything begins to transform, because we recognize that Pluto is a god, and that a god is greater than us, and that there is no possible way we can avoid the major event that is taking place. And just to reiterate, this event might not be major on the outside, so please, no fear, no worry, no panic. I've been through several Pluto transits with a great sense of empowerment. The way to deal with it is to recognize something needs to change. There's inner work to do. It might all be happening on the inside. Sometimes someone is going through an extreme Pluto transit and no one will know about it. Not for those full 2 years, because they will be dealing with something very intense that only they know of, and that only they know that they have to let go and work through. Once that is through and you're out the other side, there is nothing more liberating. You've been to the underworld, you've received the riches, and you're ready to be in the light again and to share yourself, your healing, your help with the world. So I encourage anyone that is currently in a Pluto transit to walk towards it with great inner strength and the deep knowledge that you are being helped to transform something in your life. Who is most likely to be undergoing a Pluto transit now? Of course, anyone who has their natal Mercury, Venus, Mars between 3 and 5 degrees of Aquarius, because Pluto is at those degrees this year in 2026. However, those of you who have those degree numbers in signs that are opposing or square to Pluto are also going to feel that Plutonian energy. So that is Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio. Also, if you have your sun at a certain degree, 3 to 5 degrees again, you will be receiving a transit of Pluto to your sun. So that would be people born approximately January 22nd to January 25th, April 23rd to April 26th, October 24th to October 27th, and July 23rd to July 27th. And of course, the same applies to your ascendant and your descendant, or your MC and your IC, because the angles are extremely important in any chart. So if you do have your ascendant in any one of those signs mentioned, Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, or Scorpio, especially in the early degrees, around 3 to 5 degrees, you're getting a Pluto transit this year. And if you're listening to this video in 2027, it's going to be approximately 5 to 7 degrees, and so on. Each year you're going to move a few degrees forward. And you can also go to an online ephemeris and look at the degrees that Pluto is in for the year you are listening to this video. And of course, there are other symbolic timing techniques where Pluto will visit us. Solar arcs are one of them. Pluto can come by solar arc to your sun-moon midpoint, and you can engage in a power struggle with someone for that year or two. The way to work with that is to move once again towards self-empowerment. How can you step up in your own life? How can you claim your own power? Or how can you go beyond your limits? Do you need to aim to get a raise at work? Do you need to aim for a job that is more suitable to your talents because you're not using them to the full? If you're not, Pluto may come along and say, time for change. So in whatever area you're dealing with Pluto, let go, empower, and move on. And we begin to see that this gift is enormous, this miracle that is embodied by the seasons. After winter comes spring. This is the story, the ultimate gift of Persephone. And when we are sometimes in the throes of Hades and everything feels dark, barren, winter-like, we need to remember that spring is always going to come again, but it is really up to us to make that journey back towards the light, to stand strong on our feet and not to expect anyone to pick us up, dust us off, and put us to rights again. The Plutonian journey feels like a solitary one, and this is the initiation that Pluto brings. We go through it alone, and we come out the other side, healed and stronger. So I wish all of you well, and please post your comments. I'll post some links below to previous videos which may help you with this one. Until next time.